Okay. I missed the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 you gave me at Derby. That was fun. So let's tell a story real quick. So you're working for a company that gets popped. Probably some of you are working for a company that got popped, but that's neither here nor there. Maybe you're working in ops, maybe you're working in dev, maybe you're working in InfoSec, whatever. That doesn't matter. What happens next, though, is a surprise. The auditors that did the post-incident response audit and analysis say that your software must be secure first. So what the heck does that mean, right? What are we going to do about that? You need to build security into your development lifecycle somehow, but you probably don't even have a direction. You need to have it in with your unit testing, your integration testing, the final pen test after it's ready to go. So how are you going to do that? That's the question we're here to answer today. So first let me introduce myself a little bit. My name is Bill Sempf. I am a developer, and I have been for 20 years, but I'll tell you a little bit about that. I am a husband and father. My son was supposed to come, but he decided to stay in bed and play video games instead. I'm an author. I've written 16 books on various development topics, going all the way back to the original VB.NET, and ending most recently with a book on developing HTML5 applications for Windows 8. I wrote for Rocks. I now write for the Dummies series, which is horribly appropriate for me, but that's neither here nor there. I call myself a software composer, and it sounds like an unusual term, but I got it from this book called Lorem Ipsum, written by Carlos Bueno, and it's genius. I learned more in, am I in trouble? Oh, I thought they were going to throw me out of here. No, I don't. If the recording can hear it, I'm fine. I mean, they can hear me without the mic. I'm loud. So Lorem Ipsum. I learned more in this 168-page children's book about computer science than I did in 8 years of college. If you haven't read it, read it. It's about Lauren, who takes a travel through this land that's roughly equivalent to the different foci of software development. And there's brute force, and there's spaghetti code, and there's all these different things. And one of them is the composers. And the composers build these beautiful structures out of smaller things. And that is exactly what software development is today. We build these really sophisticated applications standing on the shoulders of giants. Very, very few line of business developers today actually write any significant code. What we do is wire together existing pieces of code. Thus, composer. But if I put composer on the business card, people think I still write music, and I don't. So software composer it is. So I am also an application vulnerability analyst. That doesn't fit on the slide. So I'm a pen tester. I'm not really a pen tester. Jason is a pen tester. I do not sneak into people's buildings, feed them bullshit, and install malware. I am not that good. I'm not a good liar. In fact, I'm a terrible, really awful, terrible liar. I get nervous very easily. I do not think very well on my feet. I am not a pen tester, but it fits on the slide. What I do is I test applications to make sure that the security controls work properly. So I break into websites for a living. That's fine. And then hopefully I help people fix them, which happens a lot less often. So I am a home brewer. I am a lockpicker. And if you haven't seen, by the way, Adrian, I mean, bless his soul, man. If he brought all 3 recording sets and is running them and has a full lockpick village in the back. Well, over here. If you have not stopped by and see it, do so. His stuff is incredible. I am also a ninja. Please don't throw anything. You got me all freaked out. I know about the camera. I'm telling you. You can only see me up here because I allow you to. But please don't test me with anything. He's generally throwing things. It's really good. Anyway, in the software development industry, I'm considered something of an insurrectionist. I have this horrible habit of saying exactly the right thing at exactly the wrong time, or vice versa. In the security industry, which I assume most of you are part of, I'm actually kind of a soft, fluffy teddy bear. Security people are a lot more open-mouthed than devs are. But in the dev space, I'm considered kind of a pain in the butt. So anyway, so what are we here to talk about today? We're here to talk about a system for verifying application security controls. So this is related to the OWASP ASVS, the application verification application security verification standard. See, it is that new. that I do not even know what the acronym stands for. No, seriously. I realized I put the acronym there, not the words in my notes, and that was very foolish because I don't know how many of you speak, but you don't expect to remember stuff like that when you get up in front of a crowd. The ASVS has been for a long time a standard for, it's a standard for it's a communications protocol between tool vendors and customers is what it really is. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about, really, even though there is an OWASP code review process and software testing process, they are so impossibly complicated that you cannot fit them stably into your software development lifecycle. So I don't even use them, even though I'm on the board of I'm one of the organizers of Columbus OWASP, and I run the OWASP.net project. I'm huge into OWASP. I have an OWASP email address. But I still do not use them because they are so thick. You just can't modify them to work with your SDLC. So as I said, the original purpose of the ASVS is to provide some kind of standard for tool vendors. So ostensibly, if you're buying box software for your company, then it gives you something to measure your appetite for risk against what the tool vendor is offering. They can go to you and say, we support ASVS level 2, and you know exactly what they mean. Now, whether or not that has caught on or not, whether or not it's even a reasonable perspective is not the focus of this talk. The focus of this talk is, the goals of the ASVS, I should say first. So you can read them. I don't need to read them to you. So it's about certification of applications, right? But that's not what I'm here to talk about. If you squint while you look at this slide, you can see that this is a way for you to assure the security planning you did for your apps, for your clients. And that is what I'm here to talk to you about. ASVS version 1 was apparently quite bad. I've never really looked at it, to be honest with you. When V2 came out, which is the focus of this talk, I looked at it and immediately saw a test plan that fits, not software testing, like unit testing, integration testing, or pen testing. I'm talking about a plan that fits into the entire SDLC. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. So what are we going to do? We are going to show how your security principles fit into your products and use this tool internally to talk to your senior management. So what security principles are we talking about? Well, how many people in here are developers? I mean, who write code for a living? One person. Well, that's kind of 2 people. I see another one back there. You guys aren't really good at the whole raising hands thing, are you? So we have, so how many people are familiar with OWASP? Okay, that's a lot better. So for the 3 people who didn't raise their hands, wake up. Or OWASP is the Open Web Application Security Project. That acronym I know. And it is a free, totally free, open source organization developing content to produce more secure web applications. And it's very good. The best minds, literally the best minds in the world in application security, write the content that they provide for free, no strings attached, free like free beer. And one of the things that we talk about at OWASP is the security principles. So let's whip through them real quickly, just so we're all on the same page, because it fits into how we're going to mesh this all together. So defense in depth is that layered security mechanisms increase the security of an application. Okay? That is probably the #1 core principle that will come into play when attempting to integrate some kind of security into the software development lifecycle, right? While you're building the app, every tier is run by a different kind of dev. The database developers are over here, middle tier developers are over here, service developers are over here, UX developers are over here. But each of them is responsible for security in their own way, and that matters. A positive security model is one that defines what is allowed and rejects everything else. Whitelisting, right? You say what the application can do. You say what a person can perform, what features a person can perform in the application. And everything else is forbidden instead of the other way around, where you mark the things that are forbidden and allow everything else. Applications should fail securely. So for instance, handling errors. When your application has an error, it should handle that error securely. It should trap the error, present a reasonable error message to the user, and securely and intelligently log the error someplace where only people who are supposed to be able to get to it can get to it. The principle of least privilege simply states that any given, I have no notes on this slide, any given user, right, is assumed to have as little power as possible in the application until they're expressly given more rights in the application. Separation of duties falls into all kinds of things, but for software development, it's very much a developer operation thing, or DevOps. It's a real hip phrase right now, that says that developers develop, testers test, right, and admins deploy. And there's a separation of duties there, but there's many other things. For instance, servers have separation of duties, right? Your database server should not host both the testing database and the production database. So all these principles can fall into this one in a way. Security by obscurity is a weak security control, right? So this is something we want to avoid. And I'm sure you all know what this is. This is, hey, I'm going to take this test file and name it abc123.aspx and put it up on the server, and nobody will know it's there. Right? So that is something we want to avoid. But something we absolutely do want to do is we do not want to ever trust the client, right? Any data that comes into our application from anywhere should be considered to be a bad thing with like a trademark after it, and capital letters and quotes and stuff. Input is always a risk. It does not matter where the input comes from or where it is going to inside your application. It is always a risk. So how do we bake this all in? That's the question. We have these principles. I whipped through them kind of quickly. But how do we bake them all in? Well, you're going to need some kind of structure. You're going to need to start small and work your way up. If you are in charge of security for a suite of applications, whether they be intranet developed, stuff that you're using internally within your organization, or if you're building a product or service for sale, either way, there is some process to your development. And at every stage in this, we need to bake in these principles at every layer. But we're going to have to start small. So strangely enough, this is built into the ASVS. And the reason it is to allow tool vendors to determine their customers' appetite for risk. Okay? So there are 4 levels in the ASVS. And they're designed to start with, well, we really thought hard about security while we were building this application, kind of. And maybe we read a white paper. And then they end with, there isn't a single unencoded input in this entire piece of software, and we can prove it. All right, so varying levels in this. So let's start by looking at those real quick. So OSVS level 0 is 1, new to the ASVS, and 2, it is part of the reason why V1 wasn't so great. ASVS level 0 basically gives vendors the opportunity to give a nod to security. Right? We know that ASVS exists, and we have a plan to go forward. So this is your opportunity to get management buy-in if you're using this internally, right? Basically what you've done is you've gone to the senior management, whoever's in charge of the application security division, and said, hey, we've got to do something to bake in security from scope on. And I think I know how we're going to do it. It's this document. And I'd like to start here. Is that okay? Your ASVS level 0. That's how we're going to use it for the purpose of this this thing. You just need to get something done. Let's start with buy a Fortify scan or Veracode. Let's get somebody with letters after his name to come and look at our code. Something like that. Let's get started. Level 1, the opportunistic level certification, it is receives this, an application will receive this certification if it adequately defends against application security vulnerabilities that are easy to discover. Now, despite what a lot of the InfoSec world will tell you, there are application vulnerabilities that are easy to discover with a white box, and there are ones that are much more subtle, and that is why there are 3 levels. Level 1 is about those that are easy to discover. For instance, level 1 authentication means that you have a login and it actually works. You laugh, but realistically, I've tested a number of applications where they didn't actually test the password. As long as you had a valid username, you could put anything in the password field and press enter and it would let you in. Level 2, or standard, means that your application adequately defends against prevalent application security vulnerabilities, right? So moderate to serious risk vulnerabilities that are not as easy to find. For instance, level 2 authentication means that you salt and hash your passwords, which we should all agree is fairly important. But it is more important that we check the password, which is why that is level 1 and this is level 2. And level 3, advanced certification, shows that your application adequately defends against all advanced application security vulnerabilities and can demonstrate principles of good security design. So this is the whole, we've gotten there and we can prove it stage. I'm pretty certain I've never seen an application that actually meets everything that I've read in ASVS level 3. I'm sure there are some who claim it. I would love to see their proof. We'll go over everything, but if you read the document, you can tell me, well, actually, at the end of this talk, you tell me whether or not you know any applications that would meet it. For instance, level 3 verification for authentication, one of the things you do is use two-factor authentication, which is actually very, very easy to do. There are tons of third-party products that are very, very good, some of which are free, most of which are cheap. All of them are very easy to implement, yet almost no one does it. Why? They think it's too hard for the users? I don't know. But it's kind of a gimme. Takes the password problem almost entirely out of the picture, but no one does it. So, there are 4 verification levels. Then, there are 13 verification requirements. Each requirement has a set of its own requirements that meet each of the 3 core levels. So ASVS level 0 has no requirements. It just means that we're looking at this, right? Levels 1, 2, and 3 each have their own sub-requirements involved in this. So, when you are doing your work, and you think about this, you're starting from scratch, you are all ASVS level 0 right now because you attended this talk. Congratulations, you can put it on your business card. When you go back to the office and get the document, the level 1 pieces that we talk about here are where you're going to start. It's giving you a path towards application security. That's what we're shooting for here. So we're going to go over the 13 requirements. They are numbered funny. For instance, we're going to start with number 2. The reason is because ASVS version 1 had a different set of requirements because it's loosely driven by the OWASP Top 10. If you're not familiar with the OWASP Top 10, that's okay. It's not my favorite document. I know it gets all the press and everything, but really it's just a marketing gimmick. Too many people base their entire application security program on the OWASP Top 10. I would rather you use this. Okay, what I say means nothing, but still, I would rather you use this. I'm serious. I mean, I have no pull at all. But I would rather you use this than the OWASP Top 10. The OWASP Top 10 is easy to digest, soundbite, something that people can, throw up on presentation slides and whatnot. This actually has some meat to it. It's still driven by the ideas of the top 10 because the research underneath the top 10 is extremely important. But the actual end document is a little lightweight for application security. This has a lot more meat to it. Do I have any questions so far about what we're trying to do here? Is anybody utterly confused? Okay. Authentication has the second most requirements of any of the verification requirements. There are a lot of them. So on each of these slides, you will see a summary or sub-selection of the requirements that are in there, and I will talk about others. Please do not write them down, take pictures of the slides, or ask me for a copy of the slides, though you're welcome to them, I guess. The document is free and very good. It's only 49 pages long, and that includes like the table of contents and appendix. Just download it. You can read it before bed one night. Just search OWASP ASVS. It's out there. So all I'm trying to do, I'm not trying to teach you the document here. All I'm trying to do is give you another way to look at the document. So go get the document, and then, once you've, don't do it now, listen to the talk first. Then go get the document, and remember this slant that I'm putting on it, and see if it applies to you. So level 1 requirements, there's actually 8, and there's 11 level 2 requirements for authentication in the ASVS. For example, level 1 also includes an assurance that there are no default passwords. That's pretty important, I would say. Level 2 covers something really important, the forgotten password protocol. One of the most commonly popped parts of even big software. I remember when Sarah Palin had all her emails stolen. That was because they guessed her security questions, and Hotmail, or whoever she was using, Yahoo Mail's forgotten password protocol, didn't actually match the OWASP standard. If you have not read the OWASP standard, please do so. It is extremely good. Level 3, just a little bit. There's a couple of things that are up there. That's what's up there. Centralized implementation and two-factor auth. So session management, there is no level 3 session management. Am I still working, Adrian? Oh, fantastic. All right. Uh-oh. Well, somebody volunteer for him when we're done here, because he's awesome. Level 1, we're talking about making sure that your cookies are HTTP only, have secure in them if they're under SSL. Server level logout, right? So you actually destroy the session on the server when you log out. It also includes things like timeouts and assuring that there's logout links on every login page to give the person the opportunity to destroy their own session. Level 2 does things like checks to make sure that the session token changes on login, right? So we all know that an application, when you visit an application, it's going to give you a session token. If you authenticate, it must replace that token to protect against cross-site request forgery attacks. So that's one of the level 2 items. There are no level 3 items. Session management is actually very much a solved problem, but still very few people implement it correctly. I mean, how long was Facebook vulnerable to Firesheep? 48 months? 42 months? Facebook, for crying out loud. So it's a big deal. Also, restrictive cookie domains, so more cookie security. Cookies are something that's very, very easy to mess up. And you should, you need to make sure that you follow the appropriate protocols for handling them. So then there's access control. So access control is authorization. So we have authentication, session management, and authorization as the first 3 requirements for this. Without a doubt, these are the core pieces of the problems we have with today's applications, right? Losing credentials is how a large portion of these data losing attacks are accomplished. It's a big problem. And that's why it's, well, it's 2, 3, and 4, but numbers 1, 2, and 3 on this list. Level 1 for access control, function level authorization, right? So key problem, if you have a base level user, making sure they cannot call functions, especially like an MVC style application, call functions inside the application they are not authorized for. A developer will often simply say, it's okay, they can't see that page, therefore they will not call those functions. But as we all know, that is not true. Guessing is a very, very solid way to get through to that kind of function. Disabling directory browsing, also anti-CSRF tokens. So a session level or page view level token that will literally prevent the possibility of cross-site request forgery if you use it. In Java and .NET, it's built in, and yet people do not use it. I cannot explain this. It's a gimme, but people don't do it. It is a level 1 requirement. Level 2, assuring that access control failures are logged in a secure log facility that only can be accessed by people who should be able to access it. We also have logging a little later on. Level 2 also includes assurance that end users can't modify attributes used in authorization. So for instance, sneakily sticking their authorization level at the end of their session token, base64 encoded, which a number of very important boxed software does. And for anybody, how many people here have used Burp Suite or Zap? Oh, good, you guys know this. Good, this is good. Trivial to find that using Burp Suite. Just takes a few seconds, really. You run 500 tokens through, and you're looking at it, and it says, hey, these are all random, except the last 6 are like totally the same all the time. That's a gimme. So that's level 2. So level 3, it only has one requirement, centralized implementation, and you'll see that throughout these slides. So what centralized implementation means is that, and I'll read from the document here, there's a centralized mechanism, including libraries, to call external authorization services for protecting access to each type of protected response. So what they're trying to say here, and the same throughout this, is that security controls are common. You should not have to rewrite your CSRF protection, or your authentication controls for that matter, or your input validation over and over again for each application. They should be controlled centrally. Authorization itself as a function and authentication and session management, honestly, should be a central control. As probably you know, this is non-trivial. So many people do not do it. However, it really is level 3. I mean, that's the next tier of application security. If you can get that working, you're in good shape. Because keeping all the security controls in one place dramatically decreases the probability that someone will screw up. And speaking as a dev, yeah. Input handling. So level 1 is mostly about injection, right? The requirements say not susceptible to SQL injection, not susceptible to LDAP injection, not susceptible to OS injection, and on and on and on and on. Yeah, okay, I guess you test for all of them. But what does this mean, right? We must effectively parameterize all queries. Now, I realize that there is no way to parameterize an LDAP query, really, but you can control it. And that's what they're looking for at level 1 of input handling. Level 2, mass parameter assignment, that's a common MVC bug that I have actually a whole talk on that we'll do sometime. Canonicalized input, that's a good idea. Also, confirmation of character set is in level 2. So this is itty bitty. I'm sensing people falling asleep here. Yes, input control is extraordinarily boring, but it's also the one thing to guarantee your application will get popped if you don't handle it properly because of SQL injection. SQL injection was found in 69% of all web applications in 1999. It was found in 12% last year. We're winning this war. We are. But still, those 12% of applications are 100%. I mean, if they're found, they're dead in the water. Because SQL injection, they download, as you know, download the whole database, right? That's end game. So it's important. Even though we're winning, it's still important to be vigilant. Level 3 also requires that a single input control is required for each type of input. This goes back to centralized implementation, right? We're going to build a set, whatever your platform of choice is, we're going to build a set of input controls that does the input handling properly. So cryptography is hard, okay? Does anybody know the one rule of cryptography? Thank you. That is exactly right. How many people know developers? How many people had this talk with a developer where they say, oh yeah, but Steve, man, he's got like a 2200 chess rating, it's Mensa, he knows all this, he reads math books at lunch, we're gonna do this thing, it's gonna be awesome. How many people have heard that talk? Only a couple of you? You're so lucky. I've given that talk back in the day, the mean bad old days, before I knew what the hell I was doing. Actually, I don't know what the hell I'm doing now, but the cryptography at rest is well, all cryptography is hard. Cryptography at rest is specifically hard. There isn't even a level 1, right? So key management, #1 thing in level 2. If they take your keys, don't leave the keys in the web root, right? Don't do that. If they take your keys, it's all over. Key management is core thing. FIPS 140-2 in level 3, a bigger document than ASVS. That's like a whole training. So cryptography is in here. Cryptography is hard. Don't lose your keys. Don't build your own crypto. That should be level 1. I should put that in for version 3, seriously. Error handling and logging. Okay, level 1 is very simple. We don't spit up stack traces when somebody types a tilde into our input fields. Right? Am I right? That's awesome, yes. So no rich errors. Does anyone know how to make sure that happens? That we give up no rich errors? The way you do that, just two pieces. The first thing you must have is structured error handling. Okay? So if you have PHP applications, review them. PHP only had structured error handling in version 5 and up. Well, version 5 is still version 5. Version 4 did not. Java, even though it's had structured error handling since the dark old days, people don't use it. because a lot of Java devs come from other languages that do not support structured error handling. .NET, less of a problem. It's really the only way you can do errors. But still. So the second part is a global error handler. All web application platforms have some kind of thing that says, hey, if an error bubble is so high up that the web server is handling it now, and if you're gonna pass that stack trace to the client, do this. Last ditch effort at trapping an exception. And it works too. Those should be implemented. Check that. If you're gonna write something down, write that down. That's something to check when you get back. So level 2, what's level 2 includes? Everything here. Logs are inaccessible by default. I mentioned that earlier. What else? Not logging internal data. So if your log files are logging your database passwords, that is a bad thing. I know your log files are over here in the log serve, stuff like that. I've been a consultant since 1997. I have been given admin access on almost every single system that I've worked on since 1997. I still have admin access on about 80% of those systems. If somebody gave me enough money, now that's a bad example because I'd never do it because I'd be too nervous, but there are people who I'm certain would go, and download those log files. All right? Don't trust that just because they're more secure than the rest of the stuff that they shouldn't have that next level, right? Don't store internal information in your log files. So level 3, even more log protection, because we're assuming that error handling has been handled level 1, assuring proper encoding in the logs, so that if somebody throws an error in there, that when the admin uses a web viewer to view the log file, he doesn't get cross-site script attacked, for instance, which I've done before. It's actually very effective. So there's stuff, pieces like that. Making sure your analysis tools doesn't execute logged code is another great piece. So data protection. So data protection, level 1 is shown, right? Don't use URL parameters. We want to defend data coming in and data coming out from being someplace that we can't control it later. So if it's in the URL parameters, where's it going to end up? It's going to end up in log files. It's going to end up in router logs. It's going to end up in bookmarks, right? All these things, people are going to IM the URLs to each other. It's going to end up there. URL parameters are a bad deal for anything that's even moderately sensitive. Anything that can be modified, anything that relates to their session state. Level 2, make sure that client data can be purged and temporary data on the server can be purged. Level 3, we need to know what all that sensitive data is. We need to have that comprehensive inventory. It also includes things like detection of data exfiltration, right? So making sure that if somebody has, for instance, a great example of this is I wrote a Python script to exfiltrate all user accounts in Facebook. In Facebook's version 1 of their, in 1 and 1.1 of the Open Graph, there's a direct object reference vulnerability that, your user ID is just a big int. So I can start with 1000000 and just iterate and let the script run overnight, and the next day I've got, 220 million user accounts. Admittedly, it's only the public data for that user account, but how many people actually go and fix their stuff so that everything's private? Like maybe 20% of users. So I exfiltrated 200 million users, that wasn't that many, a whole bunch of user accounts. And Facebook didn't stop me. That's stupid. That's stupid. No one should do that, right? So that's why that's level 3 is because it's a little bit more difficult to do at the application level than it would seem. It is. It's difficult to implement. So the version 10, the verification standard requirement 10 is communication security. So we did encryption of data at rest. And this used to be encryption of data in transit, but now there's a little bit more to it. Specifically, so level 1 just says that you're using TLS, right? You got valid service certificates. Actually, even more than that, level 1 kind of assumes you're already using TLS, which I think is pretty amazing. 88% of traffic in 2013 was unencrypted. But yet the ASVS reads as though they're kind of assuming that you're already TLS. You're already using HTTPS in your applications. So I don't know where that's headed. Level 2 focuses on good TLS, right? But also connected systems. So if you have, for instance, 3 servers running your application, one is the front-end web server, one is the middle-tier business logic server or business rules engine, and then a database, what kind of authentication do you have between there? Do you have minimum privilege? Because the key, how people get in and take over an entire company via the web applications is via pivot, right? They log in, they find a vulnerability, they exploit it, they pass it to a post-exploitation team that then goes in and uses the other machines in the network to grab other applications' data. So a given application, any user account that is used to access a database should not have access to any other database on a database server, for instance. So that's level 2. So level 3 has some special considerations for TLS consideration, like revocation information, improved configuration modes, and assuring that TLS never falls back to HTTP, which is sometimes a problem because some applications require that ability. But I recommend you don't. There's just no significant reason not to use TLS on every single page view now. There's no good reason. Number 11 is HTTP security. One would think this relates to TLS. It does not. This refers to actually the communications protocol of hypertext transfer protocol itself, right? Basically, your headers, right? Only allow needed HTTP verbs. If you are not using REST, you do not need put and delete. You only need get and post, turn everything else off. If you are not using WebDAV, you do not need options and header and all those other verbs, right? There's 26 verbs. You probably need 2. If you only need 2, only allow 2. This goes back to our security principles, right? Content type headers, clickjacking protection, which is the X. Does anybody know off the top of their head? Yes. X screen options. Screen options? Frame options, yes. Look it up if you don't know it. If you have a very clicky application and it's public, you should have that header. It's just one header. You don't even have to bug your devs. You configure your server for it. Level 2 assures that headers only support ASCII. Spoofing protection, you can write them. Oh, X-frame options is in that. That's really funny. I wonder why it's like that. Huh. I wonder if I messed up or if well, I'll look it up. Somebody remind me to look that up later. Oh, did I mention this is a new talk? This is a new talk because version 2 just came out like, I don't know, November 18th or something. So this is all new stuff, and it's good. We like new stuff, yes? We like new. New is good, yeah. So, so there's HTTP security. How am I doing? Oh, my goodness gracious, we're running out of time. How many slides do I have left? Not too many. Okay, so malicious controls. This is near and dear to my heart, but I'm going to make it short. Malicious controls refers to the use of third-party controls in applications. Almost all of them do. You probably don't even know. You know that your dev team turns out this really slick-looking software quickly, and you're like, damn, this is a lot better than it was 10 years ago. I wonder what they're doing. They're probably using Telerik or something like it. They're using third-party vendors to do the stuff that's hard to do, like make pretty widgets that spin and flaming logos and stuff. Those controls are probably not being vetted by any security team, and they should be. I do not know why every requirement in V13 is, oh, I missed the V there. V13 is level 3. That's silly. This is not hard. Do the things that are required. Do code review, integrity assurance for the components. Make sure that the application, the components that are touching sensitive data are running inside of some kind of sandbox. This isn't particularly rocket science. Look at 13. It's important and it matters to you guys, and you probably don't even know. So there's another one that frustrates me a little bit. V15 is business logic. So apparently it's ASVS level 2 to make sure that your application runs properly. I mean, it does what it's supposed to do well. All this other stuff is peripheral. This whole thing, there's 10 requirements in here, and it's all, hey, make sure your application does what it's supposed to do properly. And what is it? Important business processes are on trusted servers, no elevation of privilege. That's kind of a gimme. No parameters, it supports parameter tamping protection, repudiation, information disclosure, denial of service, business limits on transactions per user per day. All these things, hey, make sure the application does its stuff properly. That should be level 1. That's neither here nor there. Definitely worth looking into, though. 10 really quick requirements that you can have one meeting with your devs and talk about what they're doing to support these 10 things. And if you get that deer in the headlights look, you know what you're faced with. Files and resources is V16. So file upload is my favorite attack against web applications. As it turns out, for most of your non-devs, it's non-trivial to do things like make sure a file is actually what the extension says on any platform. It's not impossible, it's just hard. Even in like .NET, which has a ton of cool stuff, you have to convert it to a bitstream to make sure it's actually a JPEG. And a lot of devs don't know how to do that because they don't do image processing. They're line of business devs. They do SQL database and math and stuff. Handling file upload is a big deal. However, the fact that making sure your files are stored outside WebRoot, uploaded files are stored outside WebRoot, that's level 2. That's amazing because that's super easy to do, a very obvious vulnerability, and was guaranteed to let me do whatever I want to do with your web server if it's implemented properly. So there's that. There's more to it than this even. Antivirus scanning is in there. Cleaning file names up, canonicalizing file names. Don't store things with the file names they were given, okay? Give them a new one and then store it in a database. Prevent direct object reference problems. So yeah, allowing the file of uploads is scary and dangerous, and even the level 1 stuff here is hard. I mean, talking about your devs with this is going to make them go white, I guarantee you. So last one is 17, mobile. Mobile is new to the ASVS, and it is monstrous. 28 requirements, more than doubles authentication. It is literally encompassing everything and all the other requirements except the word mobile is in there. Okay, not literally. Almost. There are some specific things. For instance, your mobile app should not run on a jailbroken device. That's something most people don't think about, but real good idea. I don't even know how to enforce that on Android or iOS, but I'm not a mobile dev. I know how to do Windows Mobile, but I don't know how to do it on Android or iOS. I'm sure you can, though. There's some platform-specific things on the list, like checking to make sure your files aren't written to the device with global read permissions. Honestly, this is a good list. Even if you're not going to do anything with ASVS, if you've got a mobile app, just read these 28 points. They're surprisingly good. And not that the rest of the document isn't. I think the whole document is fantastic. But the 28 points in 17 are really, they really boiled down the core of what you need to look for in mobile application security. So where do we go from here? Right? The ASVS is really just a set of street signs. There's no technical detail. That's good. The problem with the test plan and the code review templates at OWASP is that they are so full of details that they're almost unusable. But here, there's almost no technical direction. So I recommend a 5-step process. First, tell your management you have a plan. That's your level, ASVS level 0. Take the document, sit down with your boss, say, hey, I know we've got to do this. I've got a plan. Level 1. The second piece is to determine where your starting level is. I strongly recommend that everybody here starts with level 1 unless you already have an application security process in place. Then, the hardest part by far is going to be to match the requirements to your software. That is what isn't done for you here. You must do that, and that's good. People who try to do that for you, you're going to end up in a worse state than you started in. That's why so many people who try to use the testing documents that come with OWASP end up failing, is because they're...
Hello, I'm Geek here. Unfortunately, the Advent Media's freeze up yet again, so shortly the audio with Bill will come back on. Sorry about this. I'm working on trying to figure out how all this works, but I think Advent Media needs to update their drivers.
Make sure that you're putting as little trust in the client as humanly possible. Nothing else? Yes, Jared?
You mapped the ASVS back to the OWASP testing guide.
They're actually very similar because they're both based on OWASP Top 10. The key high-level things are very similar. The problem is that the testing guide is these minutiae, and no one can do it. It's beautiful. It's huge and beautiful, and you look at it like in awe of this massive thing, but no one can implement that. This is a plan for the plan, you know? That's what I'm giving you here is a plan for the plan. I'll be around. Feel free to grab me and ask questions. Thank you very much, all of you, for coming. I appreciate it.